Well, here we are at the start of our second month, so sit back and grab a beverage and let's quickly go over how we recovered from the mistakes of last month and see how we can strategize this month to use as little power off the grid as possible. So let's get to it. Okay, starting with the first, we have the system at 12% at first charge. Pretty dismal day, and although we did get some charge, it only covered about half of the home's total usage. So because we weren't in zombie apocalypse mode, that allowed us to run the grid off of the home while we were trying to gain as much power as the system would allow us to off of solar. So we had run the previous 10 days off of the grid. I thought that was a pretty good run. I thought that was pretty impressive, especially given the time of year it was. On the second, it gave us some pretty dismal weather as well. 15 kilowatts of total production, and the daily use of the home was 22.8 kilowatts. Our total solar day is creeping up. Now it's showing 36%. The third came a little bit more crappy weather, some high winds, rain. 16 kilowatts we produced, and that went straight to the batteries. Total solar day percentage came up to 48%. And what made that day special, though, was it was Super Bowl Sunday. And so that was fun. Lots of friends over, and holy crap! Look at the usage, 63.8 kilowatt hours. So not all of that was home usage. I actually had a childhood friend of mine come by. He has a Chevy Bolt, and we put some charge in his car to deal with his return trip. And that's kind of a neat little car. I'll have to do a specific episode in the future, and we'll talk maybe a little bit about the Chevy Bolt and some other options that are out there. I know obviously Tesla isn't the only one with their foot in the water on this one. There's a lot of other companies now that are starting to get more and more interested in the potential of electric vehicle transport. Some of them obviously have some catching up to do, but the Chevy Bolt was a neat little car. It's kind of like a TARDIS. It's organized so well on the inside that it seems larger on the inside than it appears outside, which is kind of neat. But the result of that was that we put 32 kilowatt hours into his car so that he could get that 100 miles or so back that he needed when he was returning. And because we were running on grid power, it was a really easy thing to then separate those two, simply subtract the 32 kilowatt hours from that, and leave us with the true total. Again, like most EVs, the Chevy Bolt is really good about being accurate about how much energy you put in, how much energy you use. That's why these vehicles, they're invaluable in what we're doing here, because it allows us to really keep tight track on what is really going on, even to the point where it allows us to then calculate some of those losses that we talked about earlier, whether it be for housekeeping on the vehicles or losses incurred as you run through the various inverters while you're trying to create the power. And so yeah, very handy. And so then let's bring up here on the 4th, we bid a farewell to the friends that stayed over, and we go back on zombie apocalypse mode at 5:10 p.m. And also what I'm going to do here is I filmed a short video. I think we're going to do a series of short videos called Quick Topics, where we addressed some interesting things that happened along the way. And so again, here as our friends were departing, I thought, oh, okay, well, that's a topic that needs to be addressed on its own, and that is what happens when electrified visitors come over. And so we'll go ahead and I'll shoot a quick video on that, put that up probably later today as well, and discuss that as a separate topic. So we're back to it here. So on the 4th, again, everybody took off. We put the system back in zombie apocalypse mode. Our total solar day percentage, as you can see here, was just under 60%. I knew that we had several sunny days coming up. It would have been interesting to me to see, how the system went. And so this week, more or less, replicated the state of charge that I had predicted that I would have had I not have made that mistake last month as far as putting too much charge into the car. So I thought, okay, it'll be interesting to see what happens here. So again, on the 5th, you can see that we kind of start out our solar contribution here with 39%, basically exactly 20% down from the previous evening. That tends to be a pretty good trend. So unless you're doing some late night entertaining, a lot of cooking, that kind of a thing, that seems to be a pretty consistent number. And again, that's between the time that you stop producing for the day, in other words, your total solar day number, to the time that you start producing the following day. In other words, what will you be able to make? And this will become important as we start to see the system come down in percentage. Once you get to that 20% mark, then you have to start to realize, okay, well, if I don't go on grid power, if I don't have that backup, then the system will completely shut down. It has the potential of going to zero before we start contributing the next day. So those types of things you'll look at probably in a different light, because your system with a grid backup, you'll just simply know, okay, well, what's going to happen is that at some point tonight, then I'm going to wind up drawing from grid power. Now, in a perfect world, that would mean, okay, well then at some point tonight I'm going to go ahead and draw from the grid to charge my batteries up to a certain amount. Hopefully that is something that will happen in the future. And on the 6th, we wind up with a percentage charge at first contribution of 37 and ending the total solar day with 65. So 32 kilowatt hours produced on the 6th. That was pretty good. Good sunny day. Here we go. The 7th gave us pretty good production as well. We gained a pretty few percentage points. We wound up going and ending the day, the total solar day, at 66%, where we'd been 61% the day before. And here's where things get kind of interesting. You just have to kind of wait till the closeout of next week to see if we made it through that series of rainy days that we have projected. And so, you'll just have to kind of tune in next week as the weather turns and see what happens. This brings into it, where it should be an interesting update next week, because we'll get an opportunity to look at some of the weather reports and see how well we're able to predict. Again, at a couple times a year, everybody, no matter where you live, I mean, even desert areas, they have their monsoon seasons and what have you. And so no matter where you live, you'll wind up identifying a couple of times a year where the weather will be so changeable that it might be actually pretty difficult to predict. And so that's where either being on the grid as a backup system, or having a very large system like we have to be able to plan further out, so at least you're not being surprised by this. Those are the times of the year when it might become very important to have one of those two ways to ensure that your home has adequate power. But that's it. We'll keep it short and sweet, and thanks for joining in. And like I said, I'll try and get working on that other video here. We'll get both of these out to you. And feel free to like and subscribe, as always, if these are videos and this topic is something that interests you. And feel free to have a look at our previous videos, see what got us to this point. I think that that's very important. We are content, our content is driven greatly by the contributors' replies. So feel free to comment. Let us know if there's something that you'd like to see, some test that you would like to see performed. If there's some aspect of this that you'd like to see in greater detail, feel free to comment. We do read them. And we'll see you next week when we see how we've done.